course, sharing with our viewers what exactly is the perspective of the Korean administration and the Korean public at large, even as these detentions continue in the United States of America. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus towards more news coming in. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for a universal reappraisal of World War II history. He has noted China's 14-year resistance against Japan. He's called it a decisive factor in the victory of the Allies. Guterres has claimed that the Second World War lasted from 1939 to 1945 and it is a unilateral vision. Listen in.
There is this idea that the World War started in 1939 and then in 1945. But the truth is that the beginning of the Second World War was triggered by Japan against China, the famous incident that is well known. So to say that World War was 39 to 45 is indeed a unilateral vision, and we need to have a universal.
Guterres has also elaborated on China's contribution in the Second World War that led to the victory of the Allies. Listen in.
It's true that the resistance of China against Japan was for many years decisive factor of resistance against Japan. And it had a fundamental contribution to weaken Japan, and that allowed for Japan to be defeated in the end of Second World War. So the Chinese contribution is a contribution that was extremely important for the victory of the Allies, that include China.
The UN Secretary-General has also stressed on the need to recognize China's contribution in the Second World War as well as to read history in a universal perspective. Take a look.
As I said, one needs to look at the Second World War in its entirety, and effectively it started not very far from here. It started not very far from here. It ended also in the Pacific. I think, and this is true in many other aspects, we need to read history in a truly universal perspective, and not only in the perspective of the geographic area in which an historian belongs.
Joining us on the broadcast is Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at the Hudson Institute in Tokyo. Thank you for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. We've just heard what UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has claimed. He's gone on to claim that the Second World War did not commence in 1939 but was actually triggered by Japan. And as far as World War II is concerned, we know for a fact that there's been a narrative war between the CCP and Taiwan for a very long period of time. Now, with the UN Secretary General's comments, do you think Xi Jinping has at least managed to ingrain the CCP's perspective, the CCP's idea of history with his military parade?
Yes, this is terrible. United Nations is just a puppet of Chinese government. So that this remark indicates that is a very important problem now, because along with China's view, United Nations try to redefine the definition of the World War II. That is strange thing. Indeed, when Japan attacked China, that China was not a communist China. And in the Hudson Institute, there is a colleague of the Miles Yu, who contributes the first Trump administration, published an article in the Washington Times, China's World War II victory parade, the supreme fiction. Why? Because the Communist Party's guerrilla did not contribute so much. Despite this, the current Communist Party tried to hold 18th anniversary of the victory of the World War II. This means that this is just a fiction, he analysis. in the one by one when he check the data. So that's why if the United Nations Secretary General try to say along with the data only based on the Chinese government side, this is not neutral. This is not a real United Nations. This is just a proxy of the Chinese government. That is very problematic remark, I think. So this is just a fiction. China tried to reorganize the rule-based order along with their interest, and the United Nations Security General follows this policy set by China because they are main patron for the United Nations. That is terrible. Money move, rule itself, world order itself. This is not good. Of course, not good for any other countries. That is very big problem, I think.
And that's not all. We've seen US President Donald Trump also point out that some of the countries who are a part of the Allied forces, whether it is the United States, it's the UK, they were not invited to China's military parade. So in light of this, what do you make of the UN Secretary General's statements? Because the UN so far, it's physically located, its headquarters is physically located in the United States of America. We've also seen significant influence as far as the US is concerned with the United Nations. But since Trump has adopted a more protectionist stance, do you think China is now filling a vacuum as far as influence within the United Nations is concerned?
Go and return has happened between US and the UN. The United States does not fund the United Nations under the Trump administration because the United Nations stance towards Israel or others is not neutral the United States think. So that's why the political stance affects the fund or not, and fund or not affect the political stance. So go and return, and the detail rating, so balance cycle. That is true. But at the same time, as a UN Secretary General, what is the stance they should show? Just follow the money came from China is terrible. This looks like businessman. So that is not ideal. That is not organization many countries involved. So that attitude of the, General Guterres is very big problem and scandalous, I think.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, sharing your perspective on NewsX World.